Hello. The story I'm going to share with you today took place in Adachi, one of the 23 wards of Tokyo. This area is known for having some of the lowest average rental prices in Tokyo. Not only does it have many residential areas, but it also has developed commercial and university districts. In Midorosho District, Adachi Ward, there was a 3-story house where a wealthy family lived. The homeowner, Tom Takahashi, was 55 years old and owned a bar. His wife, Nina Takahashi, was 52 years old and a housewife. They had a son and a daughter. Their eldest son, Ian Takahashi, 31 years old, lived with them. He worked as a company employee, had a calm and respectful personality, and was dutiful to his parents. One evening, after finishing work, Ichiro returned home as usual, only to witness a terrifying scene that shocked all of Japan, right in his own house. Let's dive deeper into the details of the incident. On January 16, 2024, which was a Tuesday at 8:30 p.m., Ian Takahashi was driving home. He parked his car in front of his house and turned off the engine. He glanced to the side and saw his father's car parked nearby. This morning, before leaving for work, his father had told him he would be getting his car washed, but now it seemed like it hadn't been washed yet. Initially, Ichiro thought his father might have forgotten, so he didn't think much of it and prepared to enter the house. However, a strange feeling crept over him again. Usually at this time, his mother would be preparing dinner in the kitchen on the first floor, and he would hear sounds coming from the entrance. But at that moment, the house was completely dark. It was eerily quiet, except for the distant sound of a dog barking. Feeling suspicious, Ichiro entered the house after entering the door code. He bent down to remove his shoes at the entrance. But as he reached for his slippers, he noticed there were bloodstains on the floor, which had been wiped away. He was startled and felt that something was wrong in the house. Immediately, he rushed inside, calling for his parents but received no response. He noticed more bloodstains in other areas of the house. He continued upstairs to check the situation, but couldn't find his parents in any of the rooms on the second or third floors. Feeling anxious, he called them, but both of their phones were off. Not knowing where they were, he called the bar where his father worked, but was told that his parents hadn't shown up that day. He called his younger sister, but she also said she hadn't seen their parents. By 8:50 p.m., Ichiro suspected that his parents had been kidnapped, so he called the police. Upon receiving the report, the police immediately arrived at the scene and secured the area. They interviewed the reporting person, Ichiro, who said that when he left for work at 8 a.m., there was nothing unusual about his parents. When he returned home at 8:30 p.m., they were missing. The scene examination showed that the house was still clean and undisturbed, and no valuable items were missing. However, both of Takahashi's and his wife's mobile phones were nowhere to be found. Investigators collected 10 blood samples from the floor and a knife, and quick tests showed that most of the blood at the scene belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi. But on the floor and the knife, they also found the DNA of an unknown man. Based on the evidence found on the first floor, the police speculated that Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi had been attacked at the entrance. They believed that their chances of survival were very low, and if they were still alive, they would likely be seriously injured. However, finding them was the priority. Since no valuables were stolen, the police ruled out a robbery. The police considered Ichiro's suspicion that his parents might have been kidnapped. If so, the kidnappers could call at any time. The police then checked the phone records of the Takahashis, and the last known signal came from their home. The next day, Ichiro still hadn't received a call from the kidnappers, so the possibility of a kidnapping seemed less likely. The police also reviewed the surveillance cameras around the Takahashi house to track the movements of the couple that day. The footage showed that at 1 p.m., Mr. Takahashi left the house, and half an hour later, Mrs. Takahashi also went out. Mrs. Takahashi returned home at 4:30 p.m., and after that, neither of them appeared on the surveillance footage again. The police spoke with the neighbors, but everyone said that after 4:30 p.m., the couple seemed to vanish without a trace. After the investigation, the police found some information about the missing persons. First, Mr. Tom Takahashi, 55 years old, ran a bar and was involved in some illegal activities near Nishihara Street. The street was full of similar clubs and bars. His bar had been operating for over 25 years and was well known, though it wasn't large, and it attracted regular male customers, mostly around 50 years old. He and his eldest son had taken out a loan of 37 million yen to buy the house in Midoricho district. While the family was under some financial pressure, they could still afford the payments. There were rumors that the actual owner of the house was the eldest son, and his father knew his son didn't have much money, so he took on most of the loan. Mr. Tokuhiro often went out at night and was less active during the day, so most people who knew him were regular customers at his bar. He was described as good-looking and pleasant. If a customer missed the last train at night and couldn't get home, he would let them stay with him until morning. Apart from his work, his biggest hobby was cars, and the 2 cars in his house were purchased according to his personal preferences. Next is Nina Takahashi, the 52-year-old housewife, who is rather shy and not good at communication, but very polite to everyone. In the eyes of the neighbors, the couple were seen as very affectionate and good people. Although running a bar involved illegal activities, which was not exactly reputable, they never initiated conflict with others. Therefore, the case did not seem like a disaster caused by a business dispute. After gathering basic information about the missing couple, the police shifted their suspicions to the one who reported the case, Ian Takahashi. Some people told the police they had seen him arguing with his parents over money matters, and it seemed like he had borrowed a large sum of money from his father. The police also suspected that Ichiro might have harmed his father over money, and his mother witnessed everything, so she might have also been dealt with. Ichiro was very upset by these suspicions. He admitted that he had borrowed money from his father, but their father-son relationship was very good, and the mortgage on the house was still unpaid. He couldn't be cruel enough to hurt his parents. Some of Ichiro's colleagues also provided an alibi for him, confirming that on the day of the incident, he had been at work all day and went home only after finishing. After reviewing the surveillance cameras from the day of the incident, the police discovered something unusual. Shortly after Ichiro left home that morning, a man and a woman appeared nearby. The 2 were wearing masks and were seen leaving in the evening. After they left, they threw something into a nearby trash bin. Based on their appearance and clothing, they looked very suspicious. The investigators immediately searched the trash bin and eventually found the package the 2 had discarded. Upon opening it, they discovered several blood-stained clothes, which were quickly sent for forensic testing. Takahashi's wife and husband were no longer seen on the surveillance cameras after 4:30 p.m. that day. Eliminating the possibility of a kidnapping, it seemed more likely that they had been murdered and the bodies hidden. The police then conducted a thorough check of the surrounding areas, using Takahashi's house as the center of their investigation. However, they didn't find any signs of digging in the nearby land. On the 3rd day after the incident, at 6 p.m., the police were still carefully searching every corner of Takahashi's house. When one officer reached the hallway on the 1st floor, he suddenly smelled a strange odor. The officer followed the smell to a room. To the left was the bathroom, and to the right was the toilet, with a sink area in between. The officer carefully looked around, but the room seemed normal, though there was still a faint, strange smell. Upon further inspection, he found a gap under the floor. This design wasn't rare. Some houses are built with such gaps to store items or facilitate repairs. Realizing there was a hidden compartment under the floor, the officer lifted the floorboards. What he saw were 2 large bags. Feeling something was wrong, he immediately called his colleagues for help. After opening the bags, they were horrified to find a body in each one. Both victims had multiple stab wounds on their chests. The police quickly informed Ichiro. When he saw what was inside the bags, his body trembled uncontrollably. The faint hope that his parents might still be alive shattered. The 2 victims were his parents, Tom Takahashi, 55, and Nina Takahashi, 52. The autopsy results showed that Mr. Tokuhiro had over 10 stab wounds, while Mrs. Nishimi had 8. The time of death was determined to be January 16th, 2 days prior. After the incident, Ichiro was devastated. He took time off work and just wanted to find the killer to seek justice for his parents. That same day, there was a significant breakthrough in the investigation. The blood on the clothes in the trash bag was confirmed to belong to Takahashi's wife and husband, matching the blood found at the crime scene entrance. The police determined that the man and woman seen on the surveillance camera were closely linked to the case. The police then showed the images of the man and woman to the staff at Tokuhiro's bar to ask if they recognized them, but none of the staff knew who they were. Ichiro was also called in to review the footage. Though the man and woman were wearing masks and hats that obscured their faces, Ichiro immediately recognized the woman on the screen. It was his ex-girlfriend, Hazel Morales, a Filipino who spoke Japanese very well. Ichiro suddenly remembered that on the day of the incident, he had received a call from his ex-girlfriend in the afternoon. They had broken up not long before, and the call left Ichiro feeling confused. However, since it was during his lunch break at work, he answered without it affecting his job. Morales said she wanted to get back together, but Ichiro told her that their relationship was over and they could be friends in the future. Upon hearing this, Morales didn't say anything further and hung up. Ichiro then returned to his work. Around 5 p.m., he called Morales again, but she didn't answer. So he sent her a text asking if she was still working. Half an hour later, Morales replied with a simple message. "It's over now." The police noticed something strange and decided to inquire more about the relationship between the two. Ichiro explained that 3 years ago, he had met Morales, a woman 1 year younger than him. Their relationship gradually turned romantic. During their time together, he often took her out in his car. Over time, Morales frequently used financial difficulties as an excuse to borrow money, and Ichiro always generously lent her money. He had even introduced her to his parents. Initially, his parents liked her, but when Ichiro proposed to her and asked for a dowry, his parents immediately rejected the idea. They discovered that Morales owed Ichiro around 600,000 yen, and they strongly opposed the relationship, especially his mother, Nishimi, who demanded that Morales repay the money immediately. Under strong pressure from his parents, Ichiro broke up with Morales. However, Morales didn't want this and refused to return the money. When Ichiro's parents went missing, Ichiro didn't think it was connected to his relationship with Morales, so he didn't mention it to the police right away. However, after the police learned his latest testimony, they suspected that Morales might have taken revenge on his parents. The police then checked more surveillance cameras nearby and discovered that Morales' apartment was only 450 meters from Ichiro's house, about a 10-minute walk. However, after the incident, she suddenly moved out of the apartment and no one knew where she went. There was also no one who could provide an alibi for her. A friend of Morales's later told the police that on the evening of January 17, 2024, he had seen her at a convenience store, searching hurriedly on the shelves, muttering to herself, "Band-Aids, Band-Aids." When the friend greeted her, she didn't respond. After further investigation, the police finally tracked Morales down at a guest house in Fukushima. She was arrested in the early morning of January 19, 2024. When questioned about her whereabouts on the day of the incident, she claimed that she was helping a Filipino friend look for a house and denied any involvement in the case. The police believe that Morales didn't act alone, as even with a weapon, she couldn't have handled both victims by herself. Her accomplice was the man seen discarding clothes in the surveillance footage. According to the autopsy results, the victims had deep stab wounds, including fatal ones to the heart, which Morales couldn't have done alone. 2 days later, the police identified the man they believed was her accomplice. Surveillance footage showed him buying 3 cans of beer at a convenience store in Chichura City at 10:20 p.m. on the night of the crime. He was wearing a cap, a mask, and had a bandage on his right hand. The man was identified as Brian Cruz, a Filipino national. The police quickly arrested him. After being detained, he couldn't handle the pressure and confessed everything to the police. De La Cruz said he had known Morales since childhood. In July 2023, he came to Japan as a technical intern and worked at a construction company. He lived in an independent apartment in Tokyo and had little contact with anyone except for Morales and a few Filipino friends. 2 months before the incident, he had dinner with his girlfriend and Morales at a barbecue restaurant to celebrate their reunion. De La Cruz also mentioned that he didn't know the Takahashi couple and that the entire plan was Morales' idea. He was just helping her. On the other hand, Morales remained silent. Even though she didn't cooperate, De La Cruz's testimony helped reconstruct the sequence of events. Morales had been stalking the Takahashi family for a long time, familiarizing herself with their schedule, and had even secretly entered their house a few times. She contacted De La Cruz, explained her plan, and the two prepared a knife in plastic bags. On the morning of the incident, at 8 a.m., Morales and De La Cruz sneaked into the Takahashi house and hid in a room. Since Morales had been to the house before and knew the door code, they easily entered without alerting the Takahashis. Around noon, while hiding in the house, Morales called Ichiro. That call may have been her last inner struggle, pushing her to go through with the plan. At 1 p.m., Mr. Tokahiro left the house and quickly returned. Half an hour later, Mrs. Nishimi also left. When they saw Mrs. Nishimi leave, they quickly attacked Mr. Tokahiro, killing him. At 4:30 p.m., when Mrs. Nishimi returned home, she was ambushed by the two. She tried to resist but couldn't overpower the two killers. After being stabbed several times, she collapsed. In the afternoon, Ichiro called Morales, but she didn't answer. At that moment, she and Della were busy handling the bodies of the Takahashi couple. They hid them under the yard to delay the discovery of the bodies. Together, they placed the two people in plastic bags and hid them in the storage room under the bathroom floor on the first floor. They took the Takahashi couple's phones and turned them off, but they couldn't remember where they had thrown them. After finishing the task of hiding the bodies, it was already 5:30 p.m. when Morales replied to Ichiro's message. Ichiro had no idea that the phrase, "now it's over," would have such a meaning. Afterward, Morales and Della took off their blood-stained jackets, cleaned up quickly, and wiped the blood on the floor with their clothes. On their way out, they casually threw the clothes into a nearby trash can. What confused the police was why they didn't act immediately when the light entered the house in the morning, but waited until they left before taking action. However, both refused to reveal why. One theory suggested that Morales wanted to wait for Mrs. Nishimi to return home to take revenge on her for opposing her relationship with Ichiro. Della, as an accomplice, followed Morales' lead and didn't act hastily. Another possibility was that they were worried that too much noise would attract the neighbors' attention, so they wanted to find a more opportune moment to strike. After the incident, Morales moved out of her old apartment and found a place to hide from the police. While struggling with Mr. Tokahiro, Della was cut by a knife on his hand and was seriously injured. He didn't dare to go to the nearby hospital for treatment, but instead went back to an apartment in Chuchura City before heading to a local hospital. However, Della wasn't equipped to handle strong investigators. He didn't have the mindset of a fugitive, only covering himself up loosely and going out to buy beer, where he was captured on the surveillance cameras. Meanwhile, the police further investigated Morales' background. In November 2017, at the age of 25, she came to Japan from the Philippines by a budget airline. Thanks to her youthful and beautiful appearance, she got a job as a receptionist at a bar. The staff at the bar were mostly Filipino girls just like her. The bar primarily catered to foreigners, a type of establishment that was quite popular in Japan since 1998. The entertainment provided by foreign staff was tightly regulated. Initially, they only allowed foreign performers to come to Japan for shows or work. However, after several cases of people exploiting tourism to work illegally, the Japanese government increased the checks. However, foreigners who married Japanese citizens had fewer restrictions. They were free to choose their careers, and their stay could last at least 6 months, with a maximum of 5 years. This became something many foreigners dreamed of. To extend her stay, Morales entered into a fake marriage with the son of the bar's owner, even though he already had a girlfriend. Not just Morales, but several other Filipino girls at the bar also entered into fake marriages with the owner's son to extend their stays. All of this happened before Morales came to work there. At the bar, there was a regular customer named Ken Sakamoto, 58, a wealthy man who occasionally spent up to 1 million yen in one night. People at the bar often saw Kaminari sitting on the sofa, chatting under dim lights, while Morales served him drinks. As their relationship grew closer, he began buying expensive gifts for Morales and taking her out on dates. He visited the bar 4 times a week, and despite many other customers, Morales was the best salesperson at the bar, making other girls jealous. Morales, a typical Filipino woman, valued family deeply. Her parents and younger sister lived in the Philippines, and most of them depended on her for support. Through repeated interactions, Ken Sakamoto became increasingly fond of her. However, one day he discovered that Morales had posted a wedding photo online and felt betrayed. Morales explained that it was just a fake marriage for her to extend her stay, and their relationship returned to normal. At the bar, Ken Sakamoto spent nearly 100 million yen, most of it on Morales. However, Morales didn't know that this wealthy customer had a dark side, similar to her fake marriage. In another case, Ken Sakamoto and his group were exposed in a real estate fraud case in the fall of 2018. To escape capture, Ken Sakamoto fled to the Philippines and was arrested in December of the same year. He was eventually sentenced to 11 years in prison for fraud. When Ken Sakamoto couldn't handle his own problems, the bar where Morales worked also faced a crisis. The fake marriages of the Filipino girls, including Morales, to extend their stay were exposed, and 26 people were arrested. The police even discovered that the bar owner was involved in illegal economic activities. They found out that the owner had previously participated in a robbery. During the investigation into the fake marriages, Morales got pregnant. However, her husband on paper, the son of the bar owner, didn't believe the child was his and didn't want to raise the baby. The two argued and decided to divorce. Morales lost her job and had to return to the Philippines with her child. After the divorce, the bar owner's son never contacted her again. Following these events, 25-year-old Morales worked at various Filipino bars in areas like Takasono and Takanoshita for a long time. Adachi Ward, which has the highest Filipino population in Tokyo, was where she lived, and Takanozuka had the highest Filipino rate in the district. Her living conditions were no longer the same, but she was used to spending lavishly and often borrowed money from colleagues or customers. Morales eventually withdrew from bar work and started working as a nursing assistant at a hospital in Tokyo due to economic pressures. She had to lower her standard of living and became more withdrawn. However, she still hoped to return to her former glamorous lifestyle. In 2021, Morales met Ichiro, who was a year older than her. Ichiro was cheerful, energetic, and generous. They quickly became lovers. Morales often borrowed money from Ichiro, and he never pressured her to pay it back, which made her feel very comfortable. However, when they decided to marry, Ichiro's parents strongly opposed it and forced her to pay off her debts, which she couldn't afford. What was even more frustrating was that Ichiro also listened to his parents and broke up with her. By January 2024, Morales, who was heavily in debt, finally couldn't take it anymore and exploded. She blamed Ichiro's parents for all her problems, thinking that if they hadn't intervened, she could have married Ichiro and all her issues would have been resolved. But now her life was miserable. Thinking about this, she sought out Della, an old friend, to join her in committing the crime of revenge against the couple. Although the motive was clear, during the investigation, both blamed each other. Even though Della's DNA was found on the weapon, that didn't exclude the possibility of Morales being involved. However, from the evidence collected, it seemed that Della was the one who actually struck the blow, and Morales only helped to complete the task. When the media reported the arrests of the two, many of Morales' acquaintances expressed surprise. They thought she seemed very normal and not like someone who could commit such a crime. One woman even expressed regret for not lending Morales money when she asked for it, thinking that if she had, perhaps it would have prevented her from being pushed to the edge. This case attracted the attention of many Filipinos. Some criticized the two for tarnishing the image of Filipinos and affecting other Filipinos living in Japan. Morales' striking appearance was also a key factor in drawing public attention. Some people also looked into her relationship with Ichiro and suggested that she still had feelings for her ex-boyfriend. Otherwise, why would she continue to contact him after borrowing money? Moreover, she owed money to many people, but chose to take revenge on Ichiro's parents. If it was just a matter of settling her debts, she wouldn't have had to go this far. As a result, some believed her crime was definitely related to her complex feelings toward Ichiro. Despite the rumors from outside, the police continued to push forward with the investigation, hoping that Morales would cooperate. 2 months after the crime, Morales and Della were charged with premeditated murder. As of now, the trial has not yet started, and one of them is still keeping silent. Will they play a role in this case? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. That's all for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.